Right, we're now moving on to the Pythagoras type questions with variables. So in this case, we have cos 20 equals t. You might have sine 13 degrees equals p, or tan 45 degrees equals 2q. In this case, you set up each one in the same way. All right, so you first draw your triangle, your right angle triangle in quadrant 1. The reason I'm drawing it in quadrant 1 is because the 20 degrees was given to us, and 20 degrees sits between 0 and 90 degrees in quadrant 1. I like to work out the other angle here as well by using angles of a triangle, so we end up with 70 degrees. So 20 and 70 degrees. Then we look at what cos is representing. So cos from 20 degrees is equal to t over 1. Now cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. So your t is going to be for the adjacent from 20 degrees, so next to the 20 degrees, and your 1 is going to be your hypotenuse. In order to find the third side, we use Pythagoras. So I've got here x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So the x squared is the t squared, the y squared is the side we're looking for, and the 1 squared is the r squared, our hypotenuse. And so we end up with y squared is equal to 1 minus t squared. So if we get y by itself, it becomes plus minus the root of 1 minus t squared. Because we are working in quadrant 1, the y value must be positive, and so we end up taking the positive root of 1 minus t squared, and that's going to be our side over there. Now, we cannot square root the 1 and the t squared separately. It's a binomial, so we have to keep it under the root sign together. All right, so now we need to answer the questions that they've given us. They've given us that we have to answer the following in terms of t, meaning you're not going to be solving for an angle. You're not going to be working out anything with your calculator. You're going to be using your triangle. So we're going to look at question 1 here. It says cos of 160 degrees. So now you have to go back to your cos diagram and see where is 160 degrees. And if we have a look, 160 degrees is in sine's quadrant. So you've got to ask yourself, 180 minus what will give you 160 degrees? And that is going to be 20. So because it's in sine's quadrant, cos is going to be negative cos 20 degrees. Now that you see the 20 degrees, you've got to go onto your triangle because that's where 20 degrees is. So if we have a look at the triangle, cos of 20 degrees is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that's going to be negative t over 1, which is just negative t. Right, so now we have cos of negative 200. So we've got to get rid of the negative as well as reduce the 200 down to something that will work in the triangle. So either a 20 or a 70. So we first ask ourselves, what is cos of a negative number? It is just cos of that number. So you could have either just added 360 to the negative 200, or you work with the negative angle rules. So 200 degrees is sitting in tan's quadrant. So you have to ask yourself, 180 plus what is going to give you 200? It's 20. But because we're working in tan's quadrant, cos has to be negative. And negative cos 20, like in the last question, is negative t. All right, the next one is sine 250 degrees. So again, we need to reduce sine to get something within our triangle, either a 20 or a 70. Now, 250 degrees sits in tan's quadrant. So because we're in tan's quadrant, sine is going to be negative, and you have to ask yourself, 180 plus what is going to give me 250? It's going to be 70 degrees. Now you have a choice here. You can either change this to cos 20, which is a co-ratio, so you can do that here, negative cos 20, and then use negative t, or you can go to your diagram and use 70 degrees. So from 70, sine is going to be opposite over hypotenuse, which is going to be t over 1, which is still negative t in this case. So you can choose. Either you're going to use the co-ratios and go back to cos, or you are going to work with sine in the triangle from 70 degrees, opposite over hypotenuse, but from 70 degrees, not the 20 degrees. All right, the next two are quite easy because they're already 20 degrees, already reduced, so you can go straight into your triangle because I see 20 degrees. And you just have to ask yourself, when you're working with sine, you're working with opposite over hypotenuse. So from 20 degrees, where is opposite? It is your root sine. Where is the hypotenuse? It is 1. So it's going to be root 1 minus t squared all over 1, but then we leave the 1 off. So it's just root 1 minus t squared. The last one, tan 20 degrees. It's going to be the same thing. We're now looking for opposite over adjacent from 20. So what is the opposite from 20 degrees? We are looking at our root 1 minus t squared, and our adjacent is t. So we're working with the root 1 minus t squared all over t. That's what they're asking you to get. They're not asking you to actually put tan 20 into your calculator. It's all linked to the diagram, and the diagram is formed by using Pythagoras and the clues that have been given to you. And again, the clue that was given to you was that cos 20 equals t. That started it all off.